I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to go through life with a piece of salad caught in my teeth, or one piece of hair that's constantly sticking out. I know, a controversial opinion. Small, unintentional quirks in how I look can distract people from the rest of my fabulous outfit or what I'm trying to say. And that's kind of how I think about writing and editing too. A small typo here and there or an unusual citation is like that spinach making a new home next to my incisor. Our readers just can't look away. And there's so much good stuff to read in our work, we don't want anything distracting from its clarity and power. So far, we've talked about the other 4 phases of the general writing process, from invention to revising. Now, last but not least, let's tackle the editing phase of the writing process and how to make it work for us so our work can be the best it can be. Hi, I'm Dr. Emily Zarka, and welcome to Study Hall Rhetoric and Composition. Before we get started, I need to make 2 caveats. First, I want to be clear that getting better at editing does not mean that we have to be absolutely perfect at grammar, or have a huge vocabulary or anything like that. And second, you might have realized that not everyone uses the same word to describe the same thing. Sometimes this doesn't matter because everyone knows a xenomorph is an alien. But other times, people think that Frankenstein is the name of the monster and not the scientist, and this can cause some confusion. Here on Study Hall, when we talk about editing, we mean finding typos, formatting, grammatical inaccuracy, or inconsistent citations. For us, editing is a final opportunity to review and change our text and look for anything that could affect our ability to make an impact with our words. But other people in places and writing centers think about editing more like how we defined revision, and they call these final flourishes proofreading. We're all correct, but we need to make sure we're on the same page. Like if someone offers to edit your paper for you, you can either ask them to clarify what they're offering, or just tell them what sort of help you'd like, whether that's reviewing the structure of your paper or helping polish up the final bits and pieces. So again, for us, editing comes after we're happy with our nearly complete text, but want to make sure that no small details are out of place. Now, we're going to split those details up into a few categories to help us edit systematically and make sure that our T's are crossed and I's are dotted. Sorry, writing joke. Let's start with grammar. People think that grammar is just a bunch of rules to follow about when to use a semicolon and when to capitalize words. But really, grammar is the accepted system for using the patterns and structure of a language in a way that's understandable to the speakers, readers, and writers of that language. With grammar, what we're really talking about is how well sentences conform to what readers will understand and expect around the rules for putting together words and sentences. And we learn grammar as a way to have a common set of guidelines and structures that help us communicate with another person who understands English. But in the rhetoric and composition world, we're moving away from thinking about language as a single thing that we can get right or wrong, and looking more at language as a living thing and something that evolves. So if nearly everyone in our audience will understand what we're saying and even expects a particular format or structure, we might want to keep it in even if it breaks a grammar recommendation. For instance, this happens in scripts for videos. We'll often include sentences that aren't complete with a subject and a verb and all that, since many of our accepted ways of speaking actually include sentence fragments. So as we practice and grow more confident expressing ourselves as a writer, know that we're not aiming for correctness per se. There isn't even one correct style of English grammar. There are lots. Instead, aim for what's appropriate in our context and helps our audience understand our message. For example, the serial or Oxford comma comes up a lot when we're talking about grammar, context, and clarity. I'm a big fan of the Oxford comma, but there's debate about whether or not we really need a comma between the second to last and last item in a list. If your list is very simple, it may be very clear to you that a comma isn't necessary, like bananas, oranges, comma, and grapes. And bananas, oranges, and grapes has the same meaning regardless of the Oxford comma. But there are other sentences where an added comma can really help clarify ambiguity, like the difference between let's take a photo with the birds, grandma, and grandpa, and let's take a photo with the birds, grandma, and grandpa. Yeah, that comma really changes things. In fact, certain groups and industries take an official stance. Like particular newspapers think the Oxford comma should be banished. So when we're editing, we'll first ask ourselves things like, is this written for an audience that's going to get distracted by specific grammar rules? And then we'll review our work with those grammar considerations in mind. Many of us also make the same kind of grammar mistakes over and over just because they didn't ever crystallize and become automatic for us. Again, we don't have to be grammar rule experts. In fact, that might not help us communicate with our audience. But we do want to make sure that the structure of our writing helps our message be clear. Now, if typos and grammar choices are the distracting piece of hair sticking up or the weirdly half-popped collar, style is like dressing for the wrong situation, and it's another area we can edit for. Overall, style isn't about your own personal writing quirks or voice. It's about the technical aspects of writing related to sentence structure, language use, and the mechanics of writing. One of the biggest ways we learn what style works for a given context is through reading examples. Even though there's no line in a grammar manual that says, "Thou shalt use emojis in text messages, but not in cover letters for job applications," we see enough examples of text and cover letters to start to see how it works. There are other parts of style too. You can have tone, or the attitude that's conveyed by our writing, including how formal or informal we need to be. There's also voice, which is the way you as an individual express tone. Just like I wouldn't want to show up to my classroom in a full ball gown because my students would think I was insane, we might realize that a section of our text tone is off, like it's too playful or too aggressive. And to figure this out, we need to think back to the purpose of our writing and what our audience is going to expect. There are also elements of style that are specific to different disciplines. Like scientific articles are typically written in third person and generally without using slang terms. And we figure out these style standards by reading other writings in that discipline or asking for help or researching online. For instance, another area of style that can change discipline to discipline and that we can edit to make sure we're making consistent choices is citation. Citation in general refers to giving appropriate credit to any outside sources of information that we use to craft our own work. But every field and even individual publications have some kind of shorthand that they use to quickly and clearly reference a source. These are often called citation styles. Like an online pop culture publication might only expect that writers hyperlink some text if they're referencing an outside article and mention the name of the source in the same sentence. But in the text of a professional paper in a psychology journal, we would reference the author's last name, the year of publication, and sometimes the pages being referenced, all with specific commas and parentheses and other rules, all of which directs you to a final, longer citation in the references at the end of the paper. As for why there are so many style differences, basically different groups have just agreed on a style and they've gotten used to it. And whether or not we think it's the best way or makes any sense, anything else is going to be a distraction that will take away from our points. Finally, there are a variety of other edits we can make that we're putting in the formatting category. Those would include things like consistent and appropriate headers, spacing, and fonts for our writing projects. Like if you're writing an essay or research paper, I don't care what font you pick as long as you stick with it. As long as that font is 12-point Times New Roman. Maybe Cambria if you're feeling wild. If we're writing a piece that also includes sounds, images, or video content, we'll want to make sure we've also addressed distracting issues, like whether a compressed image is appearing grainy or pixelated, or whether the audio cuts off before the right moment. There are lots of other examples of things that might be important to your writing, but whether they're tweaks for grammar, style, or formatting, this final round of polish helps ensure whatever we're trying to say or do with our writing is what our audience comes away with. Now, I get it. You might be a maverick who doesn't play by the rules. If you've learned grammar, style, and formatting rules and realize that you can do something interesting by breaking those rules, you might be able to get away with it. You might convey a message that wasn't coming across by changing up your font or using unusual line breaks. But breaking the rules to create a more interesting meaning is different from just forgetting to edit or ignoring convention without a clear purpose. Sure, you can still add a bunch of Oxford commas in a newspaper article where they aren't allowed, but most likely it won't make some kind of political statement or showcase additional interesting meaning. It'll just make your editor go back and take them out. Break the rules if and when you have a reason to do so. But most of the time, we've got a lot to accomplish in a writing task. So we're better off using grammar, style, and formatting expectations so that readers are as focused on our message as possible. Now, to catch these small details, we have to review in a very intentional way. We'll talk about editing techniques in depth in another episode, but in general, many of these techniques are supposed to help us see with new eyes. We want to get critical distance and break out of how we unconsciously read our own work. As for how we do that, every time we write and edit and receive feedback on our complete texts, we learn a little more about what to look for in our own texts. And occasionally, having other people edit our texts as a form of peer review can also teach us even more. Like, say Izzy called Gabby while they were each finishing up stories for their college literary magazine. Izzy says, "I'm finally happy with the revised ending, but what if people catch typos or grammar mistakes? I've looked at this so many times. I don't see the mistakes anymore, and I don't want to turn in something I'm not proud of." Gabby helps her think through a checklist for her concerns about editing. First, she'll run it through a spell check software, which doesn't catch everything, but can point her to a few spots to make her own decision about whether a particular comma or spelling choice is appropriate. Then she'll search for long sentences and send a few of them to Gabby, seeing if, out of context, the sentences are too long or confusing, since she has been told in the past that some of her long sentences are hard to understand. Having her checklist helps Izzy avoid the decision paralysis that made her skip the editing stage in the past. With these skills, she's able to start on her next story for the magazine with less fear, knowing that if there are things to edit, she'll address them during the editing stage. Editing gives us a few kinds of freedom, if you can believe it. Like when we consciously devote time to editing rather than making small corrections as we go, we let other parts of the writing process help us get texts into existence and shape them to do what we want them to do. We all get typos or mismatched clothes occasionally, but that doesn't mean we should be afraid of writing or getting dressed in the morning. So thinking about how your writing looks will help your text be as appropriate, consistent, and clear as possible for our readers. Thanks for watching Study Hall Rhetoric and Composition, which is a part of the Study Hall Project, a partnership between ASU and Crash Course. If you liked this video and want to keep learning with us, be sure to subscribe. You can learn more about Study Hall and the videos produced by Crash Course and ASU in the links in the description. See you next time.